And we're live. Welcome back to today's national weather forecast. We've got 3 different stories we're going to be talking about today. We're going to start with what's going on right now. That's that heavy rain in the southeast. We're going to follow that as it will be continuing and actually coming back up again as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. That heavy rain is going to continue and then move off the coast. Now, another story we're going to be talking about is what's going on up here in the northeast. We got that low pushing through. As it moves through, it's going to bring some light snow and then some extreme wind gusts as well. Some wind gusts getting up as high as 50 to 60 mile per hour with that low as it moves through. And then finally, you can see this little low popping up on the left side of the screen. There's a chance that Southern California could be getting a storm this week. So we're going to follow where that storm would be, how much precipitation we could be getting, and the exact timing of that as that comes in. Because that would be the first storm for SoCal in a while, and we are still in a drought in California, so it'll be interesting to see if this little storm can actually come through. So, as always, I always say, if you're only interested in one of these stories, you can go down in the comments below where I put the timestamps, and you'll be able to click directly to the region that you're interested in. And then the other thing I always say is, it's good to double check and make sure this is my most recent forecast, because we know the forecast models, they tend to change every single day, and I have a feeling the uncertainty with this low pressure system for Southern California especially is going to be up for debate in the models to come throughout this week. So the best thing to do just getting started is take a look at the warnings, and as you can see, the extreme weather seems to be giving the western entire half of the United States a pretty good break right now. It wasn't all that long ago that we had winter storm warnings with 3 feet of snow in Washington and Oregon. We had that Arctic chill going through Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming where it was 50 degrees below zero with the wind chill. And as you can see, the West is pretty much in the clear right now. Where we do have some warnings in place are down here in the southeast where that heavy rain is that we're going to be talking about. That flood risk right here in Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia, that was for the most part this morning. That should actually be disappearing off this map within the next couple of hours. Right here, though, is where that heavy rain is going to continue, so there is a slight risk of flooding throughout Louisiana, Mississippi, and getting into just scattered throughout the southeast as well. It's most likely right along wherever you have rivers. That's where the rivers can swell, and then you can get some flooding. And then you also see what's going on in the northeast. As that low moves through, like I said, it's going to bring some light snow, but the big story up there is actually the winds that are going to be coming in. We'll take a look at those winds as well. Looks like they're going to be maybe 40 to 50 miles per hour. So another good way to look at this is on the overall pattern of what's going on midway through the atmosphere, and you'll be able to actually see all 3 of these stories that we're going to be talking about. So we'll start down here in the southeast because that's what's going on right now. Right about there. That's actually probably a good place to stop. This is pretty close to right now, and you can just see this trough right here. We have this low pressure, and what happens when you have a trough and a low pressure? Right on the right side of the trough, you have your weather that's going on. It's usually where the low pressure is. That's where your winds are flowing in, bringing a lot of this moisture in from the Gulf of Mexico, and then that's what creates the heavy rain. So as we click through here, you're going to be able to see right Tuesday and Wednesday, that low drops right down into the southeast. So at that point, think about winds flowing into a low pressure. Right there, we're just pulling in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and that's why we're getting those heavy rains right through Mississippi, Alabama, and then Georgia before it finally moves off the coast. And then if we go back again and check out the northeast where we have that light snow and the heavy winds coming in, it has to do with this system up here. That actually looks like a more significant trough, and that's why the winds are going to be greater with that than this tiny little one we have moving through the southeast. Right here, you can see how close those isobars are. That means lines of constant pressure, and pretty good rule of thumb is the closer those bars are together, the higher your winds are going to be. You can think of it almost just like if you had a tray and then you were pouring water on the tray while the tray was completely flat, the water would just sit there. And then if you started to lift the tray up and pour water on it, it would slowly roll down. And then if you tilted it up almost vertically and then poured some water, the water would flow very fast down the tray. Well, that's the exact same thing that happens in the atmosphere. You can think of this almost like your tray, and the closer those bars are together, the steeper that tray is tilting, and the faster the wind will be flowing down the pressure gradient. So that's a little analogy science lesson right there, but that basically explains why as that low moves into the northeast, you can see how close those lines are together, how steep your tray is, and that's why those winds are going to be so extreme throughout New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and throughout almost the entire northeast, as you can see that strong pressure gradient as that low moves through. And then on the west side of the screen here, you can see that new little low pressure system moving into the screen. You can probably tell just from my voice, but I'm smiling right now because I'm hoping that this comes through, because it's been quite a while since SoCal got a storm. Most of California is still in either severe to extreme drought. So any system we could get, especially down into SoCal where it's so dry, would be great news in my opinion. So watch that low as it moves through. Looks like it could be coming through Wednesday, Thursday, and hitting SoCal around Wednesday night into Thursday. We'll look at the exact timing of that later in this video, but that's certainly something we're going to be watching over the next couple of days. So just to see everything we were just talking about, but in precipitation form, there's that heavy rain right there. And just to perfectly match it up with what I was saying, it almost matches where that little trough is right there. Right on the right side of it, that's where we're getting the heavy rain. And then as that low moves through, you'll see that heavy rain do the same thing. It almost eases up for a second, and then as it starts to pull in more of that moisture, that's where the heavy rain picks back up. So that's what's going on in the southeast. We got that heavy rain. What will be interesting to watch throughout later this week is what this low does after it moves off. Right now, the model has it moving straight off into the Atlantic right there. So just clicking back, it's moving straight off into the Atlantic. But this is one thing I've noticed the models aren't the best at in determining the exact course a low is going to take after it moves off the coast, because what ends up happening is going to significantly change what kind of weather we get. If it moves straight off the coast, it makes sense that that system's gone. No more weather for the US with that system. But in some cases, and we've seen this a number of times this year, the models will originally have it moving straight off, and then later throughout the week, it'll have the low moving right up the coast. And when that happens, you get the possibility for a nor'easter. So as of right now, not going to happen. But that's all the way out into Thursday's forecast model run. Guarantee that's going to change. So we'll have to keep our eye on it. So just going back to check out the precipitation in the northeast. There's that low that's bringing all those extreme winds. On this map again, you can see how close those lines are together. And as that moves through, there is going to be some light snow at some periods. Probably the majority of the snow has already fallen, but then throughout the day today, we're going to continue to pick up some light snow. I think, like I said, the big story in the northeast is most likely the winds that are associated with that storm. And then on the far left of the screen, there's that low popping in. You can see right here, it's just picking up moisture from the Pacific, and then right when it moves on, we'll see what happens. As of right now, it shows some rain coming to Southern California and then moving into Nevada, Utah, Arizona. That's good because there's extreme drought there as well. So that's going to be very interesting to watch that low and see if it ends up happening. But I guess one thing I'll say on this map, it's almost a breath of fresh air. Of course, we do have the heavy rain and some possible flooding down here. We have the extreme winds up here. But compared to 2 weeks ago to 3 weeks ago, a map that looks like this is pretty welcoming. It wasn't all that long ago that we had those Arctic temperatures down here in Texas, where we had an ice storm that stretched all the way from Texas up into Pennsylvania. There was an inch of ice. It was causing major car pileup. So I'm always happy to give a forecast where there's not actually all that much weather going on. It sounds counterintuitive for someone who's interested in following the weather, but it's it's nice every once in a while just to take a breath of fresh air like the weather is giving us right now. So this is another good thing to do, is just check out where the precipitation is going to fall. So that's what's already fallen. The heavy rain throughout the southeast, we were talking about it last week, but that did continue throughout the weekend. And as we're talking about today, that heavy rain is going to continue. As we click through that map there, you can see key bullseye looks to be right above Louisiana, Mississippi, stretching into Alabama and Georgia as well. That has the potential in the next few days to build up 3 or 4 inches of rain. So that is why we have that flood risk over right where you saw that bullseye. It almost, let's see if I can match it up. Yeah, it's almost right where we have that warning is right where we're expecting the heaviest rains, which makes sense. And then we'll get to the snow in the northeast in a second. All that precipitation up there is actually going to be in snow, so we'll take a look at that. What I want to see, though, is what kind of rain we're going to be getting when that low moves through. Looks like Southern California, and especially down here in San Diego, that's where we could get a little bit more rain. And then again, it's good to see it spreading out into Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico as well, because that's also an area where we have some drought. So checking out the snowfall forecast. Again, this is where we're mostly just looking at the northeast. This is clicking all the way into Thursday. And something, I almost have to pause here because it just looks so different from every time we've clicked through this map in the past. In the past, every time we clicked through, there was like 3 to 2 feet of snow throughout Washington and Oregon. Montana was getting a bunch of snow, Midwest, Northeast, even all the way down here in Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia. There was times we were getting 8 inches to a foot of snow. That is about the blankest snowfall map I've seen in quite some time. It looks like we are going to be getting maybe 2 to 4 inches up here in the northern New England. But overall, that's about the blankest snowfall map we have seen in a while. And again, I would say it's kind of a breath of fresh air. We had that Arctic blast of cold air long enough, so it's good to be transitioning a little bit. So again, part of the story that's going on up here in the Northeast are those extreme winds. And I always like to show this map because it perfectly shows what's going on. There's that low as it moves through, and then right here you can see the winds. As we click through, you're going to notice those winds will bring down some cold air into the northeast. We're going to be getting below zero or below freezing for sure. In some places, actually getting below zero, especially up right where we're getting that snow. Not exactly a coincidence, where you have the coldest air is also where you're going to be getting some snowfall. So you can see as we click through there how tight those isobars look. That shows you how strong those winds are going to be. So that's another part of the forecast. Right there, if you keep your eye on the northeast right now, it's already pretty gusty, about 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts, but we're really just getting started. As that low moves through, that's where the majority of the northeast will be getting those 45 to maybe even 50 mile per hour wind gusts before that storm moves off into the Atlantic. And then right there, you can see that next system. Actually, let's first look at the southeast. Looks like you'll have maybe 20 to 25 mile per hour wind gusts. So goes along perfectly with what I was saying earlier. The system up here in the northeast looks like a much stronger system. The isobars are much closer together. That little one going through the southeast is going to be enough to bring that heavy rain, but it's not a major storm by at least my standards. So, and then on the left side of the screen, we'll watch as that moves through. As that system goes through, you can see we will be getting some pretty strong wind gusts throughout Southern California, but especially down in Arizona, where there's the possibility of some 35 to maybe 45 mile per hour wind gusts as that little low moves through, hopefully moves through Southern California, bringing us some good rain. So again, part of the story too is what's going on with the temperatures. You can see there was a pretty big contrast early this morning. We had well below temperatures throughout much of the western half of the country, and then well above average temperatures throughout the eastern half of the country. And that's actually something that's going to be shifting around over the next few days. You can see this cold front. Actually, it's a pretty cool graphic. So I'll just watch that line right there. As this cold front pushes through, you're just going to see it push the warm air out of the region. And then I think the most interesting thing on this map is as that low, we're getting into Tuesday and Wednesday here, which is when that low is going to start moving through the southeast. You'll watch what happens to these temperatures. It gets actually, this is looking at temperature anomalies. We have a larger cold pocket of air right here, or at least difference from your average, than up farther north. And the reason for that is as that low moves through, it looks like it's going to be moving through the southern part of the southeast. So you think about the counterclockwise circulation around a low. As it moves through, it's going to be pulling down some of that cold air from the northern states, which are typically colder. So as that low moves through, again, the winds flow into a low. So then as those winds move in there, that's what's going to drive these below average temperatures for the southeast Tuesday through Wednesday. Just think of that low moving through, the winds flowing into it, and it's mostly along the coastline right here. So majority of the wind that's flowing into it is coming from the north. That's what's bringing in those cold temperatures. And then I'd say the other major thing I notice on this map is how high above average we are up in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. That's 20 to 25 degrees above average, which is quite a change from 2 weeks ago when we were 50 degrees below average. So I'm sure that is some welcomed warm air up in these northern states. Overall though, clicking through this map, except for that bullseye up there of that warm air, the majority of the map is looking pretty mild. So I'm not seeing any, obviously except for those warm temperatures up there, throughout much of the country, I'm not seeing any of those extremes that we had just a couple weeks back where there were places that were 50 degrees below average temperatures. So if we want to look at the temperatures themselves, again, you'll be able to see that cold front push through the eastern half of the country and just push those warm temperatures out of the southeast. And then as we continue to click through into Tuesday and Wednesday, when that low is going to be bringing the cold air down, that's where right about there, that looks to be your daytime highs on Wednesday. That is where, actually that's your daytime highs on Tuesday. Looks like the southeast could be in the 40s to 50s as their daytime highs on Tuesday. Again, that's because of that low that moves through and brings that cold air down, giving you those below average temperatures. And then up here in the northeast, where we had that low move through and then bring down cold air up there, that's where throughout, let's just click through, you can see that cold air got brought down throughout the day today. We get some places that are below zero, majority of the northeast though below freezing, and that looks to be continuing at least until Wednesday when we start to warm up throughout the eastern half of the country. One other story that's been going on is this cold air that has been sitting over much of the western half of the US for the last few days. It looks like that's going to be easing up at least a little bit from what it was last week. There's still large portions that are below freezing, but at least not as cold as it perhaps was for you over this last weekend. So that was everything that's going on for the next 3 to 5 days. Now we can, just for fun, look at what's going to be going on in the extended forecast. And, I might have to change what I've always been saying about not trusting a weather forecast. Actually, no, I'm going to stick with that. I always say I never trust a weather forecast more than 3 days out, especially with snowfall or the exact position of a low. I usually find more than 3 days out, weather forecasts for sure going to change, so I typically don't spend too much time on it. But these are actually climatological forecasts. It's an entire different field of programming and modeling and research. So, and I've actually found, I've been testing around with these for the last week or two, and so far I'd say they're pretty good. For example, last week, the extended forecast for what was going to happen this week was saying that it was mostly going to be dry in the northwest. And I was pretty skeptical about it because for 2 straight weeks, we had storm after storm after storm coming through the northwest. So I was going to be surprised to see that pattern change. And sure enough, as we click through here, not much going on for the northwest. Even where we think a little storm is going to be coming in, looks to be hanging off along the coast. So I may have some new faith in some of these longer term forecasts. And for that reason, I'll continue to show them because they are actually helpful to look at. So this is showing the 6 to 10 day temperature probability outlook. So what's the probability you're either going to be warmer than average or below average? So it looks like middle of the country, you're looking above average, which looks like that trend we're seeing over the next 3 to 5 days should be continuing, where we have those far above average temperatures up here in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. And then along the coasts, we actually have some below average temperatures. That's where we're expected to see some cold air in that 6 to 10 day forecast. So this is from March 6th to March 10th. That's where we're expecting the precipitation. Looks like where in previous forecasts we were having heavy precipitation up here in Washington and Oregon, looks like that might shift down into California, which would be some great news because, again, California, I was looking at some of the season totals, at least where I live. Typically, we'll get about 70 inches of rain. Right now, I think we're about like 20 inches. So there's significant deficits that we got to make up. But good news, usually March is a rainy month. So I'm crossing my fingers that that is a good sign that we're moving in the right direction, that California might get some more rain. The other place that's expecting some precip is up here in the Midwest. But throughout the rest of the country, and especially this strip right here, that's where we're actually expected to shift to a drier pattern, which, again, you could also view as some good news because that's where we've had the heavy rain for the last few days. So perhaps it'll allow some of those rivers and your soils to go down in the water level when you get this drier and reduce any future risk of flooding. There's always some kind of silver lining you can look at. So then we can look even farther out into the forecast. This is now 8 to 14 days out. This is March 8th to March 14th. And this looks like the darker the color is, that's the higher probability it has of happening. So it looks like this is pretty sure that the Midwest, for the most part, is going to be above average temperatures, nice and warm, 8 to 14 days out. And then the West Coast is going to be below average temperatures. So the darker the color, the more confident they are. And it's interesting that that almost looks like more confidence in that cold air over the West. It looks like we're almost even more confident in the extended forecast. So there must be some pattern moving in that's driving this confidence in that model for that cold air in the West and the warm air basically throughout the central and entire eastern half of the country. So then when we go to the 8 to 14 precipitation forecast, that's again some good news. Southeast, your rivers might go down a little bit, your soils unsaturate, reduce any future risk of flooding, and then especially here in California, Nevada, and Utah where we need that rainfall, 8 to 14 days out, looks like we are expecting some. And I'd love to see that this one is actually stretching all the way down into SoCal because, again, that's one of the places that they've been, I'll have to look at their totals for the season, but I would be amazed if there's not a huge rainfall deficit down there because there really haven't been that many storms in SoCal recently. And then we're also expecting some of that precipitation to move into the Midwest. It'll be interesting to see if this precipitation comes in the form of rain or snow. We might actually be able to combine it, with the other forecast where 8 to 14 days out, it looks like we're going to be well above average temperatures. So that precipitation in the Midwest, I'm just going to give my prediction right now. I think that'll actually mostly be falling as rain because we're going to be mixing it with those warm temperatures. We'll have to actually see if that ends up happening. And then we can go out even farther in the forecast. 1 month looks like majority of the country is either above average temperatures or mild, except for maybe Washington and the very tip of Idaho. When we get 3 months out, it looks like the majority of the country is going to be well above average. Pretty high confidence down here in Texas and New Mexico. And then again, just Washington and the tip of Oregon and Idaho looking to be in that colder time frame. So it looks like for the next 3 months, we're going to have an average of some warmer temperatures throughout the entire country. And then it also gives the 3-month average for where we're getting that precipitation. So even though it looks like we're going to be getting some precip over California over the next 2 weeks, it looks like our 3-month average has us in an overall dry pattern with a lot of that precipitation going up in the northern states, stretching down into the Midwest. So I clearly have changed my mind about trusting forecasts more than 3 days out, because the results from that 2-week experiment we just did showed that these forecasts are actually relatively accurate. So we'll continue to look at these just because it's fun to see what kind of weather we can expect very far out in the future. But again, the majority of the time we're going to spend each day will be towards what's going on right now. And what is going on right now is that heavy rain throughout the southeast. It was especially heavy this morning, and then there's almost going to be this period where it seems to ease up for a second before this low almost recollects itself. It strengthens as it moves across the southeast, and then we're actually going to see some of that heavy rain return throughout Tuesday and Wednesday, working into Thursday before that low moves off the coast. So we'll go down into the southeast first, because again, that is what's going on right now. It's all associated with this trough right here. So this was basically the pattern that was over. It's almost been this frozen, like this still frame right here for the last few days. And that's why we were getting all that heavy rain throughout the southeast. Now, the trouble with that is when you keep getting heavy rain, that's where your soils get saturated. And then when you bring some more rain in, that's where it can no longer soak into the soil. So that's where you get some flood threats, which we are seeing in scattered parts throughout the southeast. But this overall pattern is finally going to be breaking up, but then there's going to be one little system following in behind it. So the pattern that's been over us for the last few days, that was driving that heavy rain early this morning and throughout this weekend, that pattern is shifting and moving off into the Atlantic. But it's going to leave behind this little cutoff low. And what that cutoff low is going to do is move through the southeast and bring in some of that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and it's also going to bring down some cold air. Now, this is where there is some difference in the models. Some models have this low moving up through northern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and then some models have it moving all the way down here, right along the coastline of Louisiana, Mississippi, and then working into Florida. So the big difference there is depending on where this low actually is. You can see this model, this is the ECMWF. This model has it moving through more the northern states. So what that's going to mean is the majority of the wind, or the wind flowing into this low. You think the wind's flowing into this low from all directions. That means that southern portions of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia would be getting the most rain. And then for the most part, they'd also be above average temperatures. I'm actually thinking the more likely scenario is that the bulk of this low is going to be down almost along the coast, which is going to be bringing in a bunch of cold air, so we'll actually have below average temperatures. That's just something we'll have to watch as that system continues to develop, and then again, it moves through right there. So this is what it looked like early this morning. That's what that overall pattern. Again, as that starts to break up, your rain is actually going to seem like it's almost even done. It'll just turn into some light rain. You'll still be in it, but then on early Tuesday morning, this is where it starts to recollect itself. And you can see it, at this point, it looks like it's down off the coast, and it's pushing some of that moisture in right in the southern parts of these states. And then you can actually see it moving through right there. And again, where that low is determines where you're going to be getting your heavy rainfall. So as that moves through, this model has it mostly moving along the coastline, which means our heaviest rain will be down here through Louisiana, central and southern Mississippi, working into Georgia and South Carolina as it hops back up into the southeast and brings that heavy rain to almost all of Georgia throughout the day, Tuesday into Wednesday, and then right around Wednesday night to early Thursday morning, it looks like that low finally leaves and the rainfall is gone. And then good news in the forecast, the extended outlook looks like we're going to have a drier pattern in the future. So maybe all those saturated soils will be able to go down. So I'll just say it one more time. We've been having all that heavy rain in the southeast. That's what's caused the rivers to swell and your soils to become saturated. Right there, that's not going to be enough time for everything to drop back down. So when this heavy rain comes in again, that's why we do have some flood threat in this area. And we can actually click through and see where this heavy rain, or the heaviest of rain, is expected. And it's interesting to see the contrast of where we're expecting the heaviest rain. And I believe part of it is because of what we've already picked up this morning. That is adding on to these totals. So it shows that we've already picked up an inch here in Mississippi, working into Louisiana. As we continue to go through, some of that heavy rain is still continuing right now. And then this is where the next little system pushes through. That's where we get the heaviest rain working into Georgia and South Carolina. So right there, that's the present concern right now. That's with that heavy rain that we're seeing currently right there. And then where we look at Georgia and South Carolina, where we get over 2 to 3 inches of rain, that is with the second part of the system that comes through later, farther down, almost all the way into Florida. So it's almost 2 different rain systems that we're talking about, but it's really all stemming from the same one. That second one's just broken off from it. So again, where we're worried about right now, the warnings map typically only shows you what's expected to happen. I'll have to look at the exact time frame, but I believe it's just over the next 24 to 48 hours. That's where we're expecting that flood risk throughout Louisiana, Mississippi, working into Arkansas. And then it'll be interesting in the future, in future forecasts like tomorrow or the next day, to see if that flood risk moves down here into Georgia, where we see that heavy rain with that second part of the system. And then right there up in Kentucky, West Virginia, I'm not going to be spending any time on that today because that was mostly this morning. Looks like the rain is actually almost completely out of that area. Mostly focusing on the southeast down here because that's where there's some extended heavy rainfall. So again, that was 12 a.m. on Monday, so this morning, where we're getting that heavy rain almost right where you see that warning. It almost perfectly is in line with where that heavy rain was this morning. That's where we're adding more water to the streams, more saturation to the soils. So then as we continue to click through, any more rain we get, that's why we have that little bit of a flood risk. But again, I mean, this might just be me, but I would take this over the crazy ice storms we had 2 weeks ago. It was only 2 weeks ago where this wasn't rain. It was actually a giant strip of ice going through Louisiana and Mississippi, over a half an inch, even an inch of ice in some places. We had power outages, we had car pileups. So, I mean, you always have to weigh weather against each other. And personally, I would rather have heavy rain than a giant ice storm. But that's also because I'm from California and also like the warm weather. But could be up to you. Let me know in the comments whether you'd have heavy rain or ice. I think I know what most people are going to pick. So that is the silver lining with this forecast. It's at least not an ice storm. So again, even clicking all the way into tonight, you can see that rain continuing from Mississippi into Louisiana. And that's why that slight risk of flooding is over those regions. It's because all the way from this morning, clicking throughout the day, that rain continues to fall in the exact same place, which means it just continues to add more and more rain to your totals. And then as that second system comes in, it's moving from west east. So the first parts of the southeast that feel this new system will be Louisiana and Mississippi, 6 a.m. on Tuesday. This is actually the new one showing up. If I back up, you can see how that's the heaviest rain. That was 12 a.m. this morning. It almost eases up, seems like it's almost gone, and then 6 a.m. Tuesday seems like it comes back. Well, that's because it does come back. It's just a different little broken off system that you see will be moving east through Alabama and then later into Georgia and South Carolina. So it is 2 different systems. What we're concerned about right now is what's going on in Louisiana and Mississippi. If we look at the totals, that's what we're expecting with the first part of the system. Another inch or 2 to fall on top of what we in total with what we got this morning throughout Louisiana and Mississippi. Right, that strip right there, that perfectly matches where that warning is in place. And then watch what happens as the next system comes in. It first brings some heavy rain to those exact same places in Louisiana and Mississippi, getting our totals up over 4 inches. But then it starts to bring more heavy rain throughout parts of southern Alabama working into Georgia, where we get by Wednesday over 2 to 3 inches of rain in those regions. Now, the other part of the story that we're talking about, this is showing temperature anomalies. And again, we saw what was going on with this low as it moved through. Now, this next thing, watch closely because you're going to see this cold front push through the region, and it's a very pronounced cold front. You can just see those warm temperatures being pushed off. It almost looks like a wave is coming through and bringing in that cold air. Well, that cold air is going to continue because it's right about here. We have that low. Remember, it was right off the coast of Louisiana. So winds flow into a low. That's what's bringing down all this cold air. It's all those, or colder air, I should say it that way, because this is showing temperature anomalies. So it's bringing air, instead of pushing it in from the Gulf of Mexico, is bringing down some of that cold air from your more northern states that are colder. So as that goes through, you're almost able to see exactly where this low is depending on these temperatures. I didn't actually notice this when I was clicking through it earlier. Right there, that's where the low is, right above Alabama. And you'll notice there's counterclockwise circulation around a low. So on the left side, that's where you're bringing in the coldest air. You're 10 to 15 degrees below average throughout Louisiana and Arkansas. And then on the right side, think it's still counterclockwise. So on the right side, that's where you're actually pushing in warm air from the Gulf of Mexico. The other thing you're pushing in is moisture, and that's why as that system moves through, our heaviest rainfall is going to be on these southern states where that moisture is being pushed in. And then you can see that continues as it goes off. It's going to continue to push in some warmer air into Florida and some colder air down into Louisiana and Arkansas. I didn't notice when I was clicking this through earlier, but it is a perfect representation of how this works. And then, wow. And typically, I've seen these diagrams in textbooks, but you usually have a low pressure system right there, and then you'll have a warm front stretching out almost stretching out straight east from the low, and then you'll have a cold front stretching out almost to the southwest of a low. And you'll notice how perfectly that shows up on this map. You have these warm temperatures being pushed in on the eastern side of this low, and then down here you have that cold front being pushed throughout the region on the southwestern side of the low. I might have spent way too long on that graphic, but I thought that was at least pretty interesting. If you want to see it even better, if you missed it, we'll be able to see this low right there. You can actually see how this works. And if we continue to click through, we should be able to see that temperature contrast we were just looking at. So right about there, that's where that low is, down here in Alabama. Overall, as that low moves through, you'll notice it's right along the coastline. So overall, we're bringing down that cold air. That's why much of the region is below average over the next few days. But then as we continue to go through, as it finally moves back onto land, that's where you notice these winds pulling into the low, bringing down those cold temperatures into Arkansas and Louisiana. You can actually see the wind streams now on this map. Looks like Tuesday at 10 p.m., there's parts of Arkansas that are actually below freezing, and we're getting into the 30s and 40s throughout Louisiana and Mississippi. And then right on where we had that warm front on the side where we're pushing in warm Gulf of Mexico air, that's where we're in the 60s to possibly even the 70s in parts of Florida. So if you missed it on the first time I was explaining that, you could probably perfectly see it there when we actually have the winds showing how that system works. Now, I think that basically sums up what's going on in the southeast. If we just want to go over the exact timing again. So the first heavy rain, that's from early this morning, looks to be easing up throughout the day today. And then that new system looks to be showing up 6 a.m. on Tuesday, and then continuing and moving through the southeast throughout the day Wednesday before it finally moves off the coast. And then in total, let's see if we have our total precipitation map. In total, that's what we're expected to get by Thursday. Again, we have that strip in Louisiana and Mississippi where we do have that slight risk of flooding. And then with that later system, Tuesday and Wednesday, the heaviest rain will be down here in Georgia, where we're expected to get over 2 inches of rain. So we'll stay tuned with this system. The second part of it is coming Tuesday and Wednesday, so we'll have to stay updated with the forecast models to see what we get there. So the next thing I'd want to transition into is what's going on in the northeast. So we'll back up the map here and see what's going on. We got this, can't actually see it right now, but you can just tell by the way the winds are flowing that we've got a low pressure system somewhere around here. It should pop up somewhere on this map. There we go. So that low pressure system is what's driving the weather in the northeast over the next couple of days. And it's going to be affecting your weather in 2 or 3 different ways, actually. 1, it's going to be bringing some light snow. 2, it's going to be bringing colder temperatures. And 3, it's going to be bringing some extreme wind gusts. So as that low moves through, you'll notice it's exactly what we were talking about down in the southeast. You have that counterclockwise circulation around the low. That's going to be bringing that cold air down into the southeast. On Monday at 7 p.m., looks like the entire northeast is in those below freezing temperatures. And what that's going to allow is some of that snowfall to fall, especially where you're the coldest, especially up here in northern parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. That's where we're going to be seeing the snowfall. Now, the big part of the story, I think, isn't the cold temperatures or the 2 to 4 inches of snow we're going to be getting. I think it's actually the winds. And you can see where some of these wind streams look to be getting more extreme. That's as that low moves through, we're going to be expecting some 40 to 45 mile per hour wind gusts that we'll take a closer look at in the next few minutes. So just taking the broad look of that low as it moves through, it's going to stretch through. You notice the snowfall is mostly just to the northern parts of Maine when it's the heavy snowfall. And then as the low continues to move through, we just get the light rain following behind it. And then again, those isobars are very close together. I won't do the full description again of why that leads to extreme wind, but you can see the winds are going to be extreme throughout the northeast. And it's showing up on the warnings map as well, because we don't have a winter storm warning, which would typically be associated with if we had a whole bunch of snow pushing in. We actually have a high wind warning, and that's stretching all the way through Pennsylvania, all the way up into Maine, covering the majority of the northeast, where we're going to have those extreme wind gusts getting into 40 to 45 miles per hour. But first, we'll just look at the precipitation. There's the first part where we're actually getting some decent snowfall, maybe 0.1 to 0.2 inches in the very northern parts of Maine. Much of the northeast at this point is still too warm to be getting any snowfall with that. That's actually a perfect map to show that. See, up in Maine, we're below freezing. You can tell by that blue color where it signifies below freezing temperatures, but the majority of New York is still above freezing. We're in the mid to even high 30s right there. So that's why when this system first pushes through, majority of the northeast is actually just getting some rain. It's because we're too warm to be getting snow, except for that little strip up in Maine where we see those below freezing temperatures. So then as we continue to click through, remember, as we continue to click through, that's where the low, as it moves through, it'll be pulling in that cold air behind it. So that is where the snowfall starts to spread out a little bit more. That's where majority of New York can get some light snow, working into Vermont, New Hampshire as well. But again, that's just some light snow, maybe 0.05 inches per hour. That's the reason we don't have a winter storm warning with this. We actually just have the high wind warning because the snowfall overall is not going to be that large. But again, the winds are, I think, the big story here. As that system moves through, you see Maine, when the first little blast of this system brings that heavier snowfall to the parts of Maine, it's going to be accompanied with some 35 to 45 mile per hour wind gusts. And then it almost eases up for a second, and then there's the second push of this system where we saw that light snow follow in afterwards. Well, that light snow is going to be accompanied with some extreme winds. Looking at that map right there, that's getting into tonight into early Tuesday morning. Large parts of New York, actually right where we're getting that light snowfall, is actually also going to be getting possibly 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts stretching into Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire. And then as we get into Tuesday morning, those extreme winds will be pushing up into upper New England. That's where we're getting 60 mile per hour wind gusts throughout almost all of Maine as we get into Tuesday morning and then throughout the day Tuesday. So I think that is actually the big part of the story. We're just getting some very light snowfall, but we're getting some, I'd consider, extreme winds. When you're getting up to 50 to 60 miles per hour, that's where you know there's a significant pressure gradient right above you. And then that's going to be gone, and then it looks like we'll be calming down as we get into midweek and into Thursday and Friday. So it's not lasting for all week long at least. So we'll just start to go through what's going on. 7 a.m. this morning, again, that's where that heavy snow was building into Maine, and then it's moving off in the next couple of hours. It'll be completely gone, and then we'll just have that light snow following in behind it. That light snow, again, is going to be more widespread, going into New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, but not nearly as much as we're getting as that system first moved through. It looks like it's finally gone 1 p.m. on Tuesday. That's where that system appears to be gone. There might be a couple little traces as we get through Tuesday night, but nothing too major to spend too much time on. So that's what we got this morning. You notice this big bullseye right off the coast. Looks like parts of that stretch right into the coast of Maine where we could be getting some 5 inches, but for the most part, just 1 to 2 inches throughout most of Maine. And then as we continue to click through, as that light snow continues to fall, looks like 1 to 3 inches throughout northern parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine with that light snow as it continues to fall. Again, by Thursday, this is what your total snowfall is looking like. It'd be wrong to call this a major storm because this one little strip is getting 6 inches of snow. For the most part, 1 to 2 inches throughout upper New England as that system goes through. So again, that's why I'm saying that winds are actually the big part of this forecast. If you're living up here in Maine, you're probably already feeling the extreme winds with 50 mile per hour gusts at 1 p.m. today. And then that's the second part of the system. You see that almost moves off, and then this new one flows in behind it. That's where we're getting some 40 mile per hour wind gusts at 7 p.m. on Monday, or today. And then that's going to fill in throughout upper New England as we get into throughout the day today, into tonight, and then tomorrow as well. That's showing 7 a.m. on Tuesday. When you're getting that dark color there, that's looking to be about 60 mile per hour wind gusts stretching through New Hampshire into Maine. And then looks like Maine overall on Tuesday is going to be windy. Almost the entire state, 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. And then it'll finally calm down by Wednesday. So it looks like Tuesday, I think, is the top. Tuesday wind is the top story in my opinion for the Northeast. And if we want to see that again, just that trough going through, bringing that extreme winds, some light snow to the Northeast, and then it's gone. So it's a quick mover. And last thing I'll say about the Northeast is we're going to be following this little cutoff low very closely to see what happens when it moves off the coast of Virginia here. As of right now, the models have it moving straight off into the Atlantic, but if this low decides to move up the coast and into the Northeast, who knows, maybe we get a major snowstorm later this week. In my opinion, I think this low is going to move straight off into the Atlantic. I think the overall flow looks to be coming from the northwest, so it's going to be very difficult for that low to push up against the overall flow to make it up into the Northeast and bring you guys a major snowstorm. Now, the thing I've been teasing throughout this video, and if you're from California, you might still be watching, wondering why I haven't talked about it yet. Well, now is the time. We're finally going to talk about that low pressure system that looks to be moving into Southern California this week, possibly bringing our first bit of rain and snow to SoCal in quite some time. So if you just missed it as it clicked through too fast, right now, there's a little ridge over California. It's rather sunny and warm out, but we have this little cutoff low that's breaking off of this system up here. It looks to be moving straight south, and then it looks to be moving right into Southern California. And this is showing up on Wednesday, which isn't that far out in the forecast, which means there's at least a possibility that this will actually happen and will actually bring some rain and snow to Southern California. But as I've experienced looking at these models, this is one of the hardest things for them to predict when there's a cutoff low and exactly where it's going to come on shore. So we'll just have to watch this one closely over the next couple of days. So if we want to look at the precipitation, you can see it actually start to move south right there. There's where it's actually started to form. And then you'll notice it looks like it's taken a path right into Southern California. This, at least as of right now, shows that we could be getting some rain and even some snow throughout Southern California Wednesday into Thursday, finally spreading out into the wider region as we get into Thursday. And you can probably just hear the excitement in my voice, and it's because this is the drought map right here. This is what California is still in. Although we had that one big storm over, maybe that's probably a month ago at this point, overall, we are still well below average when it comes to our precipitation, both this year and in the last couple years. So you can see there's large portions of California that are still in extreme drought, severe drought, major drought, including Southern California, where they've especially been missing out on a lot of the systems throughout this year. So that's why I'm very curious to see if this low does end up moving through SoCal, because if it does, that's going to bring some much needed rain and hopefully bring some better outlooks to this drought map right here. It seems like even when we do get a storm, this doesn't change much, but every little bit helps. So although this system doesn't look big by any definition, it's at least something. So that's why it's going to be interesting to watch if it happens. Right there, that's where you see it moving down south. This is now showing vorticity. We don't have to get into that right now. You can just think of it as storm energy. Right there, you can see that low seems to be packing a pretty good amount of energy, which is encouraging because that's a low. It's moving counterclockwise. So right here, it would be funneling in some moisture into Southern California. And the stronger the storm is, the more moisture it's going to be funneling in right there. And you can see it looks to be hitting right down in Southern California, which I believe is where we're getting the greatest possible rain accumulations. And then you can see that moves off into Utah, Colorado, and then who knows what it'll do later in the forecast. So, moment you've maybe been waiting for throughout this live stream, what kind of precipitation could we be getting in Southern California? It looks like that low right off the coast about 1 p.m. on Wednesday, and then as we get through Wednesday evening into early Thursday morning, some of that rain, as of right now, again, I don't want to get too excited about it too early because forecast models certainly change, but as of right now, it looks like we're building in some rain to Southern California. Again, it's nothing crazy, especially if you were watching the southeast part of this forecast where we had heavy rain for 3 straight days. This looks to be a quick blast of some light rain, but again, at least it's something. So let's look at the total accumulations region-wide, and then we'll actually zero in, take a local look. It shows that we're going to be getting mostly right where we saw that moisture being funneled in, down from Central Coast all the way down into San Diego. San Diego seems to be the bullseye where we might get an inch of rain with this. It's also good to see some of that precipitation spreading out into Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, because if I can find it again, those states are actually in a worse drought than California is right now. So they especially need some precipitation right there. So that's the region-wide. And if we want to see the snowfall, click through there. There actually are some scattered little bits of snowfall in Southern California, which actually goes along with an interesting temperature anomaly we're going to be seeing popping in here as that storm moves through. Looks like there's also going to be some snowfall for Utah and Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. Actually, more snowfall for those locations. That's where maybe more moisture has been able to funnel into the storm, and we could get over 6 to 8, maybe 6 inches of snow right there. But what I just mentioned about the temperature anomaly, you'll notice as of right now, California's basically mild temperatures. We might have some areas down here in SoCal along the coast that are 10 degrees above average, but for the most part, nothing crazy when it comes to how far our temperatures are off from average. And then as we get into Tuesday, looks like the entire Central Valley is 10 to 15 degrees above average. But what I'm interested in, what's going on in Southern California here. As we click through, again, we're looking mild as we get into Tuesday, still mild, actually a little above average throughout Tuesday afternoon, well above average looking into all the way into Tuesday night. And you're probably wondering where I'm going with this, but it's where this storm pushes in. Right around Wednesday night into Thursday morning, when this storm pushes in, we're going to have a pretty significant cool down. That's where we get 10 to 15 degrees below average temperatures throughout much of Southern California. Again, that's right when that low is moving through. And again, it's just brief. We're mild. It gets relatively cold around Wednesday night into early Thursday morning, and then the low's gone, and we go right back to mild temperatures. I just thought that was kind of interesting right there, and it explains why we might actually be getting some light snow throughout those areas. And there's also an interesting thing going on with the temperatures themselves, not just your averages, which I'll show in a second. So looking at the precipitation in Southern California, this is where we can actually look at the exact timing. There it starts creeping in 4 a.m. on Wednesday. Looks like it's heavy rain, but off the coast, 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And then right around 4 p.m. on Wednesday is when that rain starts to move in. You'll notice the heaviest rain down here in very Southern California, getting down into San Diego. And then some little bits of snowfall as those colder than average temperatures allow some of that precipitation, at least in your highest elevations, to fall as snow. And then we're still getting some rain in San Diego. That's perhaps why our totals are the best down there throughout 10 p.m. on Wednesday, and then it looks to be gone 4 a.m. on Thursday. So again, just going back to the temperatures, well, let's actually try to see if we can match up exactly when the storm's coming through and the temperatures themselves. So right about there, 4 p.m. on Wednesday, 10 a.m. Wednesday, that's when it's still just off the coast. And then 4 p.m. Wednesday, that's when the rain's moved in. 10 p.m. Wednesday, that's when it's already almost gone. So it's a quick mover. So let's go to 4 a.m. on Wednesday. That's right before this system moves in. Or we'll go into 10 a.m., right when the system moves in. You'll notice that Los Angeles is 57, Riverside 61, San Diego 61 at 10 a.m. in the morning. Now this is where things get a little bit weird. As you go to 4 p.m., temperatures should be warming up. That's typically what happens in a day. Your temperatures at 4 are much warmer than they are at 10. But as you can see, as that system goes through, our 61 in Riverside or 61 in San Diego actually decrease. And we even get some temperatures in some of these higher elevations that look to be below freezing, which explains why we could be getting some snow in those locations where you see the blue color. You might not think that's all that interesting, but for me, it seems pretty rare to see 10 a.m. temperatures actually warmer than your afternoon highs. So your high might actually be in the morning as that system moves through, hopefully bringing some good rain along with it. If we click through and check out the rain as it moves through, again, where we're able to pick up the totals the longest, that looks to be where the rainfall totals will be the greatest. Possibly getting an inch down here in San Diego. I always tend to err on the higher side when I'm talking about rainfall in California because I think I just want it to be an inch. Most likely between half an inch and an inch, actually. And then down in Los Angeles, again, it's not much, 0.2, 0.3 inches, but it is something. And it's been a while since we got some rain, so we'll continue to follow this. Because who knows, maybe it'll hang around the coast longer, not just move through in a day. Maybe it'll just sit here and continue to funnel in moisture and continue to give us some rain. You can't really say what's going to happen until it's actually happening, especially with a cutoff low where the weather forecasts are always a bit shaky on what's expected a few days out. And then finally, if we just look at the snowfall, again, maybe 1 to 2 inches at best throughout Southern California. We'll see what happens there again. This isn't set to come in until Wednesday, so I guarantee the forecast will change. We'll just have to see how it does. So that was actually pretty good timing today. Almost wrapped it up in a perfect hour. Before I go, we'll just do a quick summary of what we talked about today and then also what we might be talking about in the future. We've got that heavy rain going on in the southeast right now, creating that slight risk for flooding in Louisiana and Mississippi. That's actually going to turn into a new little low pressure system that'll bring some heavy rain to more southern locations and especially Georgia as we get into midweek or throughout Tuesday and Wednesday. That heavy rain will continue over the southeast, especially there in Georgia, and then it'll move off the coast. What we'll have to keep our eye out for in tomorrow's forecast is if we start to get some of those flood risks there in Georgia that we have in Mississippi and Louisiana right now. Now, another part of the story is this low moving through the northeast. It's bringing some light snow and some cold temperatures, but the big story might actually be the extreme winds associated with it. Throughout much of the day Tuesday, parts of upper New England will be 45 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts. So light snow, cold temperatures, but the big story up there I think is the winds. And then finally, down here, for the next couple days, this is going to be the key thing I'm watching because I think there's the most uncertainty in this forecast of what's going to happen. So it's going to be most interesting to follow the models of that low as it moves through Southern California. We'll have to see if we even get some rain, and then if we do get some rain, how much are we getting and where is it going to fall? That's going to be this key thing that I'm watching over the next couple days. Just one last snapshot of the warnings map. This is probably the key thing to focus on every single day because it gives you a good quick glimpse at what's going on weather-wise. You can see almost the entire western half of the country, not much going on. And I'd say that's actually a blessing. We had 3 feet of snow in Washington. We had the wind chill warnings not too long ago in Montana where it felt like it was 50 below zero. So actually a breath of fresh air to see no warnings on the western half of the United States. What we'll maybe hope to see in the future is some little winter storm warnings popping up down here in SoCal. I know I probably shouldn't say I'm looking forward to warnings, but I'm going to be honest. I'm looking forward to some more rain in California. And then if we look at the eastern half of the map, that's where some weather actually is going on right now. Again, we have that flood threat down here in Louisiana and Mississippi associated with that heavy rain. We'll be keeping our eye on Georgia in future forecasts because it looks like they'll be getting the most rain going as that low continues to strengthen and develop. And then up here in the northeast, we've got the high winds, maybe an inch or two of snow associated with these winds, but again, those are around 45 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts throughout New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So we'll be continuing to keep our eye on that in future forecasts as well. So I hope this was useful. I do these forecasts every single day, so if you like to stay updated with the top weather stories going on around the country, you can subscribe to Holt Hanley Weather, and thank you for watching.